Okay, well, my name is David Harper, and this is my wife Diana, and we've been farming here for over 50 years at Top Barn Farm. Here we're in the middle of Worcestershire and right on the edge of the River Severn Valley. 5 miles from Worcester. We can actually see from where we are here, we can see the cathedral in Worcester. So we married 51 years ago and moved to Top Barn, to this house, and started farming the land here. We actually my father took over this farm 2 years previous to that, when I was in Africa, and so I came back to farm the land here. But let me perhaps go back a little bit into our family history, the Harper family, because we're relative newcomers in this area. My one grandfather, my mother's father, came from Cornwall, buying cattle, I think, to Worcestershire, and saw the land up here, thought it was good, and bought land somewhere in the 1920s. My other grandfather came from Shropshire, the next door county. He'd been a tenant farmer there on the land and wanted to farm his own land. At that time, land was cheap between the wars. In fact, there was a recession, and really there was no money and people couldn't afford to buy land. But the whole of this area, something like 4,000 acres of land, was being sold. The estate were in trouble, I think, due to the death duties and the recession after the First World War, and everything went on the market. Now that must have been a huge thing, because this estate had been in being since probably for 1,000 years, since the Norman Conquest maybe, and everything was up for sale. So they had a sale in 1920, and about half the land was sold at a very low price, but it probably seemed expensive to the people then because there was no money, and to borrow money was very difficult. So my grandfather from Shropshire came down in probably 1927 or so to look at the land down here, and bought a farm and moved down here in 1928. The land had already been offered at 2 farm sales and had not been sold. So land had no huge value because there was no money to buy it. And so my 2 grandfathers ended up on farms next door to one another, and that's how my mother and father met and started farming away from their father's farm. And then my grandfather rented a piece of land here in this village. Now they lived only in the next door village in Little Whitley, so it wasn't too far to come and bring the livestock down to a rented field of grass in Holt. So after that, my father got interested in more land that was coming up to be rented, and he took that on, I think in about 1940-41, during the Second World War, and then went on to buy the land and the castle, which was the house that actually owned the land. It's again, it's 1,000 years old, the castle. It's been modified and modernized a lot since then, and that was going to be sold after the war as a whole. They were not prepared to split it, but my father managed to find the money, borrow the money, and bought the land, and that's what established us in this village of Holt. He then bought other land, but the big break perhaps came when gravel was being dug in this area, here on this farm, and it changed hands, and my father was able to buy part of the farm, and other land since has become available because of gravel digging and the disruption of the sort of farming families in this area. So back to the this farm here, which we took over in 1967. We took over more land then after that in the area, and then and we had 4 children. We have 4 children. Our daughter Claire, who is farming down in Cornwall, son Richard, who's farming, has a land here on this farm in this block here, as does our son John, who is farming vegetables and livestock, and then our other son Michael, who is running the farm shop and the farm park here, really looking after people. So we are semi-retired now. We have the business centre next door, which we set up in 1990, and that is just about to be sold to another member of the family, so we should be passing on part of the farming. It's been an interesting time, hasn't it, Di,
very.
Farming here, because it hasn't been just farming. We have diversified. How did that happen?
Well, we've always been very diverse. We've had no end of crops, different crops, and we've had caravans on the farm, and we had pick your own strawberries, so we always had a lot of people on the farm. And then I suppose the major diversification was when we had some buildings which weren't really suitable for modern day agriculture. They were put up for turkeys, most of them. We didn't want turkeys, so we developed them for business units, and we now let off all the buildings for people to come in with their different industries. It's absolutely fascinating, and we now have about 70 tenants, as well as other diversifications now, which you can probably go on and talk about.
Yes, we have 70 tenants, and they're all doing various things. It's quite fascinating, really. And we love to see the sort of enterprise that goes into them, the way that people have ideas and perhaps develop them first of all in their own spare bedrooms at home, and then decide they want more room, they need more people, and to see businesses growing gives us great delight. And we work very closely with our tenants here. Matthew Baines manages and helped us actually to set up the business centre in the first place, and we work very closely with the people here to make sure that they have what they want, and that they're able to move their businesses forward. But as well as the businesses here, we also have what we call social enterprise companies, occupying various sort of corners of land, sometimes not corners, sometimes bigger areas, but the idea is that areas where people can come with various needs. Some might have drug or alcohol dependency problems and need to get out on the land, and they can come here and they can do so physical work, and also get therapy and encouragement. And then we also have another centre which is a special needs centre for all ages, and that's been running now for 20 years. Another centre which looks after young people who are not doing well at school for one reason or another, but when they come out onto the land they totally change and are sort of one-to-one with the teachers or leaders. And so there are others too. We have a number of different enterprises where people can come on a daily basis. There's no accommodation here, and they can be helped. And we have an amazing group of people. We don't employ them. They are running their own businesses here. But people definitely get helped. We see changes happen. We see their whole character and disposition change. And in many cases, they're able to go on and do other things as a result of it. So that's another part of what we do here. So there's many parts to our business, but we all try and work together. We meet together. We're working pretty closely, and we compare notes and hopefully encourage one another.